So today we're going to do a really quick mini PD on parental involvement in mathematics and how to get our parents involved with algebra more on a regular basis. So today our objectives are going to be to identify what our current status is with parent involvement, analyze the obstacles we face due to this cultural setting, and create material that can be used on a regular basis to encourage parental involvement and build relationships. So we're primarily focusing on Miami Northwestern and what we could do here as math teachers, not as administrators, but people that are actually in the classroom. All right, so I'm going to read off a few statements, and what I want you to do is give me a thumbs up if you agree and thumbs down if you disagree. I hear from most parents weekly. I hear from them monthly, quarterly, in a year. I hear from most parents when their students have an A. I hear from most parents when their students have an F. I call parents regularly for positive feedback. I call regularly for negative feedback. I call more often for positive feedback. I call parents when there's a severe behavior issue. All right. After I've called the parents, those students' behavior has changed dramatically. Parents have mentioned their ethnicity and culture as an explanation for their expectations and desires of their children. Parents have mentioned my race and background when talking about justifying their students' actions. I want more parents to be involved in their child's education. So I think we all agree that at Miami Northwestern, we don't have enough parent involvement. Parents aren't contacting us, they're not talking to us, and there must be reasons why. So, Shay, next slide. What I want you to do is to just real quick brainstorm and think back to when you were in school. And I want you to think about ways that your parents were involved.
Okay, so in elementary school, my mom would volunteer to throw parties because we're not an elementary school teacher, so obviously there's no parties in front here. My mom would volunteer to throw the Halloween party.
Okay, so volunteering on special events.
Yeah.
My mom was only PTA, but both my parents were throughout elementary and high school. They always were aware of which teachers were the best teachers, and they made sure that I was in those classes.
Okay.
So it wasn't you weren't just randomly in an algebra class. They specifically said you were taking algebra with this teacher.
Okay, so they actually knew the school, knew the teachers by name, and knew which ones had a good reputation and which ones didn't have a good reputation. Any other way that our parents got involved?
I think with my parents from elementary, they were more hands-on in the school. But as I got to middle school and high school, there was an expectation in my household that I knew that I better get my lesson, or there would be some stern consequences when I got home. So there was a lack of, well, I shouldn't say lack of, but it was a decreased amount of volunteering. However, high school I was very active with curricular activities, so mom was more on hands with that. But as far as academics, there was a set expectation where I guess allowing me to become independent. I knew that I had to maintain a certain grade average if I wanted to live in my parents' home.
Okay, so the academic foundation was set early on, and then a extracurricular foundation was set in high school. Okay, great. So what's the difference? What do you see is different between how your parents were involved, or how you saw other parents involved, and how our parents are involved, our students' parents?
Well, the difference would be that the students, I can't give a specific percentage, but a lot of the parents are younger.
Okay.
In my generation, a lot of the parents are working more, and leaving the kids pretty much to raise themselves and take care of themselves. And those parents that are younger, they're more about trying to be a friend to the child rather than being a parent to the child. So there's some boundary issues there. So I think in terms of the involvement, the difference would be in the earlier generations, the parents were more hands-on than now. The parents are a lot busy with their, work or personal lives, so it leaves them less time to stay as active as probably what they need to be.
Okay, Okay, so they're young and they have long work hours or different work hours. Anything else that might be preventing us from being able to communicate with parents?
Sometimes I don't have a working phone.
Phone numbers. Okay, so the school's actual list and directory is not accurate. When we call, we end up calling Subway. Okay, so what else? What other things prevent us from being able to reach parents as effectively as we wish we did?
I think at our school, we have a lot of turnover with like teachers. So like you have a lot of new teachers coming in and out. So like I know from my experience, just like trying to figure out how to balance everything to be a teacher and then making time for parent phone calls is like kind of tough sometimes. I assume a teacher's been teaching 5 to 10 years, has figured that system out and can make time to make parent phone calls. Like for me, it's like unless you're really bugging me, I'm gonna call home. But other than that, I got to do my other thing. It's hard.
Okay, so a lack of time not being able to call. Here are a few things that I thought of that may be preventing, that may be a culture change from where we were as kids and where our kids are now. For starters, there's usually only one parent to contact in terms of who actually lives with their child. So a lot of people come from single parent households. So you're not sure, do I call the dad, do I call the mom, are they living with a stepmom? Where are they going? A lot of kids live with their grandparents whose name isn't listed. The second thing we already talked about was the work hours. We're not sure what times our students' parents are working. Some of them work night shifts, and that's the only time that we're available to talk to them. Another thing that I have found is that I have a lot of parents who don't speak English. A lot of them speak Creole or Spanish, and so there's a huge language barrier. And even if their child has positive behavior and negative behavior, I don't even call because I know I'm not going to be able to communicate effectively. And then there's also a cultural difference. I know that I come from a very different cultural background than the majority of my students, or all of my students. And so there might be things that I don't recognize that they see as important, and I don't even know that that importance exists because of that cultural disconnect. So the reason we have to figure out how to get parents involved is because it highly affects how our students are performing. We know, based on a lot of studies, that parents that are more involved have students with higher test scores. Parents that are constantly calling the school to find out how their kids are doing probably have the kids that are top students, the ones that are always behaving, are on task, and take responsibility for their actions. And this also holds accountability for the whole family. It's not just the student at school. It's the student, their parents, their community at a larger setting. And what I want to do is just kind of throw out some ideas on how we can get parents more involved. There's some things that we could do school-wide, which is not as much of our control. Discovery nights is something that's been working a lot in the Virginia schools. So discovery nights are basically nights where parents come and learn the same material that their kids are learning for a half amount of time. So that way when kids go and need help with their homework, their parents have seen it before and understand the context of what that homework is. So, technical assistance, making sure their phones are working, make sure they have access to internet once in a while to check their emails, making sure that they know how to use a computer to help their student use a PowerPoint or use Microsoft Word to submit their essays. Robocalls, our school does a lot of these where they call up and leave automated messages. As a math department, we can add to that robocall with our own messages that we have a unit test coming up. We have something else that's going to be happening this week. Make sure that your student's here on Thursday because they have an interim test. Things that we could do as an individual department for our student body. And translators is probably most important for our ELL students. Having more translators available, that way when we want to call a parent of a Hispanic background or Haitian background, we're able to communicate with them in a language that they feel comfortable with so that they can also ask questions about their students. And the last thing I want to say is worksheets. So in front of you we have 2 assignments that we worked on this year. This team over here has an assignment on proportions that we did that had pictures, and this team over here has a homework assignment that we did on functions. I want to show you a quick example of what I mean by getting parents involved with homework assignments. Okay. So this is an assignment that I pulled off that we used in Unit 6. It was basically just slope-intercept form. We made them pull out the y-intercept, pull out the directions, and then the slope, and then plot it. And that was the entire assignment. So it wasn't a lot of discovery, it was a lot of regurgitating and memorizing what that was. An alternative assignment, would be to do something like this. You tell your students to interview their parents, and most kids are actually very excited to ask their parents questions about what they're doing, what they bought, what they shopped for. And so in this case, it's about their salary. So it would say interview a parent, a guardian, a coach, any adult, any working adult, and ask them to calculate their typical daily earnings. And then here's some suggested questions. Where do you work? Students should know what company their parents work for, or where they go every single day when they leave. How often do they get a paycheck? Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's every day, maybe it's by the week. Do you get paid extra? So there's a bunch of questions, and then they would fill it out. Based on whatever they answered for number 4 and number 5, they could fill out this chart. And then they could actually plot it and answer some extended questions. So while they're still getting the same basic understanding of slope-intercept form, they're understanding in a concept that allows them to have conversations with their parents about what they're learning in math. So without their parents knowing, they are actually helping their students with their algebra and able to help them understand that if I got a bonus, well, if I got a bonus, I got that automatically no matter what. So at 0, that's my y-intercept. And they may not communicate it with the math language, but they're still seeing it in the real world context, and they're still involving their parents. So what I want you to do for the next 5 minutes is talk in your groups, try to see how you could change proportions and functions into something that parents could get involved with.